Day, Agent. I am Geoliene Lipit, Cura, also known as Agent 11, and I will be your partner for this mission. Have you ever wondered why there is a crime? In some theories, it explains that crime is due to the social forces that drives an individual to commit crime. And according to some theory, that there are born criminals, which means that it can be inheritedly or genetically or probably inborn to become a criminal. So with this, I'm going to explain the two factors, which are the sociological theory and biological theory in the trait theory. What is a trait theory? A trait theory is the view that criminality is a product of abnormal biological or psychological traits, which means that it is an approach that focuses on the study of human behavior and drives attachments. Trait theories are primarily interested in the measurements of traits which can be identified as habitual pattern of beliefs, behavior, thoughts, and emotions that are linked to antisocial behavior pattern. In the foundation of the trait theory, we're going to talk about the three persons who contributed in this theory. First is Cesar Lombroso. Cesar Lombroso works on the born criminal identify primitive physical characteristics that he believed were the direct cause of crime. Second is Rafael Garofalo. Rafael Garofalo, he also contributed his thought about physical characteristics indicate a criminal nature. Number 3 is Enrico Ferri. Enrico Ferri added a social dimensions to Lombroso's and argued that criminals should not be held personally or morally responsible for their actions because forces outside their control can cause criminality. The bodybuild or somatotype school developed more than 50 years ago by William Sheldon held that criminals manifest distinct physical characteristics that make them susceptible to a particular type of antisocial behavior. These types are mesomorphs, which means that they have well-developed muscles and an athletic appearance. They are active, aggressive, sometimes violent, and the most likely to become criminals. Second is endomorphs. Endomorphs have heavy builds and are slow moving. They are known for lethargic behavior, rendering them unlikely to commit violent crime, and more willing to engage in a less strenuous activity, such as fencing stolen property. Third is ectomorphs. Ectomorphs are tall, thin, and less social and more intellectual than the other type. What is psychological theory? We all know that psychology is the scientific study of human mind and human behavior, which means that in criminology, psychologists focus on how individual characteristics may interact with the social environment to produce a violent event. This perspective also includes psychodynamic perspective, behavioral theory, and cognitive theory. We will also explore the possible relationship between mental illness and violence. One is psychodynamic perspective. The psychodynamic perspective is largely based on the groundbreaking of ideas of Sigmund Freud. It is a sufficient note that Freud thought that human behavior, including violent behavior, was the product of unconscious forces operating with a person's mind. Freud also felt that early childhood experience had a profound impact on adolescent and adult behavior. So, psychodynamic theory suggests that criminal offenders are frustrated and aggravated. They are constantly drawn to the past that occurred in their childhood. Because of negligent, unhappy, or miserable childhood, which is most often characterized by a lack of love and nurturing. That's why a criminal offender has a weak or absent of ego. Most important, research suggests that having a weak ego is linked with poor or absence of social etiquette, immaturity, and dependence to others. Research further suggests that individuals with weak ego more likely to engage in drug addiction. Second is behavioral theory. Behavioral theory maintains that all human behavior, including the violent behavior, is learned through interaction with the social environment. With that, people are not born with a violent disposition. Rather, they learn to think and act violently as a result of their day-to-day experience with the people they meet outside. This experience proponents of the behaviorist tradition maintain might include observing friends or family being rewarded for violent behavior. Third is cognitive theory. Cognitive theory focuses on how people perceive their social environment and learn to solve problems. The moral and intellectual development perspective is the branch of cognitive theory that is most associated with the study of crime and violence. And that are the three topics under the psychological trait. Biological theory focuses on how hormones, genes, brain, or nervous system interacts with their environment. It is a theory that explains why personality or traits manifest through biology with DNA and processes in the brain. The criminal is a person whose behavior is controlled by solely conditions determined at birth. Most of the biocriminologists believe that physical, environmental, and social conditions are working together to produce human behavior. Biochemical. The major premise of the theory is that crime, especially violence, it is a function of diet, vitamin intake, hormonal imbalance, or food allergies. The strength of the theory are that it explains rational violence. It shows how the environment interacts with the personal traits to influence behavior. Neurological. The major premise of the theory is that criminals and delinquents, when suffer from brain impairment, as measured by the EEG, attention deficit hyperactivity disorder, and minimal brain dysfunction, are related with the antisocial behavior. Genetic. The major premise of the theory is that criminal traits and predisposition can be inherited, which means that the criminality of the parents can predict the delinquency of the children.